I never liked the way the second button on my blouse never quite lined up with the rest. No matter how I ironed it, steamed it, refastened it, there was always that soft offset, like something had shifted quietly out of place and decided to stay there. Janet stood in front of the screen, one hand resting flat on the table, like she was steadying it for surgery. My name sat in bold at the top of the document. I watched it from the back of the room, rows of plastic chairs and familiar backs of heads between us. Some leaned forward, some scrolled their phones. Paige's pen clicked once, then stopped. Janet didn't raise her voice. She never did. She gestured toward the chart with the red circles and underlined annotations and said, "This is what happens when documentation becomes indulgence." No one laughed. She continued tapping the screen, not looking at me. 53 pages of unsanctioned client commentary, off-protocol messaging, and irrelevant personal anecdotes. Nancy shifted in her chair. Her eyes moved toward the back corner where Richard sat with his arms folded. He didn't blink, didn't nod. Just sat there like a nameplate on a locked drawer. Janet's hand moved toward the keyboard. Lisa's fingers were white around her notepad. She didn't speak. She never did in these meetings. This, Janet said, is not professional work. It's sentiment disguised as strategy. And it's over. Her finger pressed down. The screen blinked, then cleared. There was no gasp, no murmur, just the low whir of the ceiling vent and someone's cough 2 seats over. I felt nothing in the chest, just the left wrist, where the strap of my watch had worn down into the skin from use. A faint line. Not painful. Just there. No one turned around. Janet spoke again, but the words slid past like the scrolling stock ticker at the bottom of a muted screen. She was still presenting, still explaining why boundaries mattered, why warmth wasn't scalable. I looked down at my lap. There was a coffee stain near the hem of my grey slacks, faint, dried, from Monday morning. No one noticed. I hadn't bothered to clean it. Somewhere to my left, Paige nodded once, not toward me, toward the screen. Like she approved of the cleanliness of it all. Outside the room, my phone buzzed once. Then again. I stood. Slowly. No one looked up. Not even when I walked past Janet and the blank screen. Not even when I opened the door. The hallway felt cooler. I didn't check the messages. I already knew one of them was from Matthew. He never sent 2 in a row unless something had been decided. I kept walking until I reached the east stairwell, the one no one ever used because it echoed. There was a small metal trash bin near the window, half filled with takeout bags and folded receipts. I took the pen from my pocket and clicked it once. I didn't write. I just held it for a moment, then placed it gently inside the bin, resting it on top. Then I stood there, still, and said nothing. I used to rehearse my reports out loud before the monthly meetings. Not because I was unsure of the numbers, but because I didn't want my voice to tremble when I said them. The first quarter I was there, I rewrote the call, summaries 4 times before sending them to Janet. I removed the sentence about the new puppy. I replaced "sounded tired today" with "confirmed delivery timeline." I adjusted offered encouragement on her son's graduation to discuss future staffing plans. When the report finally passed, she underlined 3 bullet points in green and marked the rest with a silent check mark. It wasn't approval, it was dismissal with structure. Lauren once looked over a spreadsheet I'd formatted manually because the tool had crashed mid-save. She didn't glance twice at the context fields, just tapped the screen near my notes and muttered, You nurture clients like they're pets, not portfolios. I didn't answer. I clicked the top cell and started highlighting rows. I used to wear the grey blouse with the stiff collar every Monday because it matched the company colours. The fabric itched where the tag had come loose, but I never sewed it back down. Seemed too visible, too much like insisting on comfort. During one review cycle, I filled in the entire CRM template with template phrases, followed up on service milestone, confirmed satisfaction with deliverables, offered resolution options. I left out that Warren had mentioned his daughter's scholarship falling through. I left out that Doris had quietly cried for a moment on the phone and thanked me for not rushing her. I turned people into fields. Janet told me, "This is clean. Keep it that way." I remembered nodding. I always nodded, even when it didn't feel like anything was being heard. In the break room, once Abigail leaned close and lowered her voice. "You really remembered Hutchins' birthday." Without a reminder, I wiped my thumb across the coffee lid where the barista had spelled my name wrong again. She waited. I nodded. She blinked. "Okay. That's a choice." It was the same tone people use when someone decides not to own a microwave or still uses checks. I wore a navy blazer to the holiday party, even though I hate navy. It was what Lisa wore to every external meeting. I thought maybe it was a quiet uniform for being allowed in. Nobody commented on my outfit. But Janet passed by once and said, "You always look like you're trying very hard to look like you belong." I smiled. Not the kind that opens anything, just enough to close the moment. Later that night, I found a thread loose at the cuff of my blazer. I pulled it out slowly, 1 inch at a time, until it was no longer visible. And I never spoke of it again. I used to think certain silences were neutral. They're not. Some of them are shaped like erasers. During the quarterly review, I watched Richard pause before the slide showing our retention numbers. He adjusted his tie. "Janet's team has made real strides in client loyalty," he said. "It's a credit to strong process enforcement." I didn't blink. I noted how no one corrected him. Later that week, a basket of local preserves arrived at reception. A small ivory card was tied to the handle. Evelyn's handwriting curved across the top. "To the person who remembers what matters." Janet peeled the card off, looked at it for a second, then said, "This must have been addressed wrong." She tossed it onto the supply cart. I didn't retrieve it. My mug still sits to the left of my monitor. It has a faded print of a bookstore facade, the kind with hanging ivy and wooden lettering. Broderick had given it to me wrapped in a brown paper bag, no ribbon. "For the one who gets it," he'd said. I never corrected his grammar. The ink has worn thin from use, especially around the handle where my fingers rest. Once Broderick sent a handwritten thank you card. He used fountain pen ink that bled slightly through the envelope. Janet opened it, glanced at the name, and slid it into the back of her drawer. It's not appropriate to accept personal notes from clients, she told me without looking up. The drawer stayed locked after that. I never asked for the card back. One afternoon, Tom called the main line. He asked to speak with the woman who remembered about Daisy's surgery. Karen logged the request, then sent the inquiry to Lauren. He didn't specify a name, she said. Could have been anyone. Daisy was his dog. He'd told me she had trouble with stairs. I had looked up a nearby vet and emailed the info after hours. That part didn't make it into any CRM field. At a team lunch, I mentioned offhand that Evelyn's daughter had started a new job. Janet looked up from her tablet. "Let's stay on topic, Claire. Personal trivia doesn't drive retention." I folded the napkin in my lap, twice. 4 corners, 1 line down the middle. I don't remember what I ordered that day, but I remember how the silverware clinked when everyone else went back to eating. These weren't major moments. Nothing thrown, nothing shouted, just paper-cut edges that no one treated. The mug still warms to the touch when filled. That hasn't changed. And I still keep it on the left side, even though I'm right-handed. Some things I don't shift anymore. I always adjusted my chair before meetings, even if no one else did. 1 inch forward, hands folded, a habit that made me feel slightly more inside the room. The file was already cued on the screen when I entered. The title bar read, Annual Review, Client Interaction, Audit. No name, just a label like any other artifact meant to be examined, then archived. Janet stood in the front, her hand resting on the mouse. She didn't gesture toward me, just clicked. Page 1. Contact logs, response times, project extensions. Then charts metrics colored bars in steady upward arcs. By page 5, my notes appeared fragments of conversations, context behind. Decisions, handwritten timelines, now converted to sterile grids. She paused on a slide with a quote from a client. I trust her because she remembers. Janet cleared her throat. This is not analysis. This is sentiment masquerading as methodology. I watched Bruce glance at his watch twice. Documenting a client's dog's limp is not revenue-generating behavior. It's a distraction. Someone coughed. The room didn't move. Nancy adjusted the hem of her sleeve. She didn't speak. Birthdays, retirements, anniversaries. None of that belongs in a CRM report. Rachel looked down. Her hair shifted forward just enough to shield half her face. This, Janet continued, is what happens when boundaries collapse. It isn't strategy, it's leakage. Slide by slide, she reduced my year into a cautionary tale. I traced the curve of the pen in my hand. It had a small chip on the clip, barely visible unless you knew where to look. She turned client services into a therapy booth. The final slide loaded. A summary page. Below it, a small rectangular icon. Delete. Janet clicked. The window blinked once. Gone. No exhale. No intake. Just a stillness shaped like something irreversible. She turned from the screen. We're restoring structure effective immediately. Lisa clutched her folder like it might leave without her. Her eyes never met mine. I looked at the empty screen. It didn't flicker. It didn't stutter. It simply accepted the command. I had documented every conversation, not because I needed proof, but because I believed remembering was part of the work, not extra, not optional, just part of holding people where they wouldn't fall through. A vibration buzzed once in my pocket. Then again. Matthew's name, most likely. He didn't call unless the moment mattered. Janet was still speaking. From now on, nothing outside formal protocol will be tolerated. I turned slightly enough to see Bruce open his email. She blurred the line between client and colleague. I placed the pen flat against the edge of the table. No motion. Just the weight of a choice held in one object. No one stopped me. No one called out. It was never really about data. It was always about who got to decide what counted. I always left my notifications on silent, not because I feared interruption, but because I didn't want to know who had forgotten to reach out. Janet was still presenting when I returned. Her voice moved in steady patterns, clipped and precise the way people speak when they believe order has been restored. A new framework, a 3-phase rollout, standardized templates, projected compliance by end of quarter. Richard remained in his seat by the window. His hands were clasped his tie, still knotted in the same slight tilt to the left. No papers in front of him, just a folded napkin, untouched. I waited until she finished the next sentence. "I don't have questions," I said without raising my hand, "but I do have an announcement." No one turned fully. Just the slight stillness that happens when people sense deviation. "I'm resigning," I said. "Effective immediately. Due to sustained hostile conditions and professional defamation." My voice didn't carry. It didn't need to. Janet exhaled through her nose. "You can't walk out in the middle of a department meeting." I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up screen, unlocked the offer from Marlowe Partners displayed with the timestamp. Richard didn't flinch. "My exit clause permits immediate termination under demonstrated misconduct," I said. "This qualifies." A long pause followed, the kind that settles not because agreement has been reached, but because resistance feels inconvenient. No chairs shifted, no objections, just the soft hum of the HVAC system, louder now in contrast. Janet's voice came again, quieter. "You're making a performative choice. This isn't professionalism. It's pride." I reached for the laptop on the table. I closed it gently, one hand on each corner. "I'm applying the efficiency the company values so highly." I unscrewed the cap of my water bottle and poured the remaining inch into the nearest plant. It soaked in without resistance. At my desk, I unplugged the charger, coiled the cord neatly, and slid it into my tote. The mug was still warm. I picked it up by the handle and didn't glance at the screen behind me. No one stopped me. No one offered farewells. Not even Lisa. By the door, Janet added one more sentence. "You've misunderstood your worth here. That one landed differently. Not sharp, just hollow." I didn't answer. Some exits don't need a sound, only the certainty that you're never walking that hallway again, not because you weren't allowed to stay, but because you finally understood why you shouldn't. I never realized how quiet it could be when the only thing you're trying to keep up with is your own breath. The desk I was given didn't match the others. It was slightly shallower with a scratch down the left side that looked like someone had once tried to move it alone. The chair had a soft creak, like it was used to being sat in by someone who didn't shift much. I didn't ask for a replacement. There was no formal onboarding, no handbook thick with acronyms. Just a short email from Matthew. "We're glad you're here. Make the space yours." I brought the bookstore mug with me, set it to the left as always. No one commented on it. No one asked if it violated brand visuals. At noon, I walked outside without logging the time. I passed a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and stopped long enough to read the prices on the chalkboard. I didn't buy anything. I just liked that I could choose not to. The first message in my inbox wasn't from a manager. It was from Evelyn. "Wherever you are, don't forget that you're already enough." I didn't respond. I just stared at the period at the end of the sentence and thought about how deliberate it felt. Not a flourish, not an ellipsis, just a full stop. A small cactus sat near the window across from my desk. Its pot had a chip in the back, barely visible unless you leaned in too close. I liked that no one had hidden it. That imperfection wasn't rearranged for optics. On the wall behind me there was no mission statement in a frame, just a hand-painted board someone had nailed in unevenly relationship first, strategy next. It wasn't centered. I didn't try to straighten it. At 5, I stood up. I didn't glance at a timesheet. I didn't count how many interactions I had processed. I picked up my bag, slipped my phone inside, and zipped it all the way shut. No Slack pings, no flagged items, no follow-up reminder. Only the soft click of the office door and the sound of someone 2 desks down humming a tune I didn't recognize. I walked 3 blocks without checking my reflection in any glass. I passed someone jogging. They nodded. I didn't return it. Not out of rudeness, just because I didn't need to be seen to feel real. I never liked the way some emails pretend to be casual when they're actually structured like contracts in disguise. The subject line read, Rebuilding Together, a strategic conversation. No greeting, no context. Just 2 paragraphs, 2 bullet points, 1 sentence underlined. Several long-standing accounts are pausing renewal. We believe your insight could assist in transitioning them back. Followed by, this isn't about blame. It's about unity for the greater good. I moved the cursor to the corner, dragged the message into a folder I had renamed that morning, detached, not archive, not trash. Just far enough. Later that afternoon, a second message came through. Richard, we're encountering unanticipated turbulence with a few legacy clients. Your familiarity would be invaluable during this adjustment. He added a calendar invite. It expired unread. Evelyn's name had already disappeared from Pemberton's featured partners list. A quiet removal, no announcement. Just 1 less logo. Karen had called Matthew last week asking if Tom's contract would be reconsidered. He'd told her directly, I only talked to the woman who remembered what I forgot to say. Then hung up. Doris had tagged Marlowe Partners in a public post. For once, a team that listens like they mean it. The comments beneath it were polite clipped, unsure how to respond without looking like they agreed. Janet's final message was short. No salutation. We don't hold anything against you. We'd just appreciate some assistance. Client continuity matters more than history. I didn't reply. There was nothing cruel about her words, just flatness. No weight where weight should have lived. I closed the tab and adjusted the silver ring on my index finger. It had a faint bend at the base, a small flaw from years ago, when I'd tried to straighten it on my own. The metal had resisted. It still fit, but only on that finger, only if I turned it just so. Some returns aren't refusals, they're clarity. And some doors stay shut, not because they're locked, but because I've finally stopped reaching. I used to measure my value by how quickly I could disappear when someone else started talking. Now I walk to work. 15 blocks. Same coat every day, the lining's torn near the wrist. I haven't fixed it. It reminds me I no longer need to dress for assumptions. My title sits on a narrow brass plate, Director of Client Relations. The letters aren't bold. They don't shine. They rest. No one here asks how many emails I sent before noon. No one comments on my pacing. When I decline meetings after hours, no one sends follow-ups with exclamation points. I keep a green notebook in my bag. Inside are pages with names, not numbers. I still write down things that matter, daughter likes, blue ribbon, husband's surgery went well, hates voicemail, prefers texts. No one audits those notes. A new mug sits on my desk, white no design, smooth all the way around. I don't reach for it like a shield. I just drink. The photo from Pemberton, me beside a team I used to call familiar, now stays tucked in the bottom drawer. Folded once, not torn. Last week, someone from operations asked how I kept clients so engaged. I handed him a blank note card and said, start by writing their name without looking it up. He laughed, then stopped. You're not joking, are you? I shrugged. People remember what remembers them. He didn't reply, but he kept the card. I ate lunch alone yesterday, not because I had to, but because the quiet no longer felt like proof of absence. I sat by the window, watched a child drop their glove, watched their mother pick it up without looking. Some habits stay invisible, unless someone's watching. As I passed the glass wall by the lobby, I saw my reflection, shoulders level, steps even. I didn't adjust anything. Once my sister told me, "You're the kind of person who tries too hard to stay useful." It's not a compliment. At the time, I nodded. Now, I keep the cardstock for birthday notes in the drawer above the photo. Warren's daughter turns 22 next week. I already know which pen I'll use. I used to keep everything in duplicates, one copy for protocol, one just in case protocol failed. The envelope arrived without a return address, but I recognized the seal. Heavy stock too stiff to fold without leaving a line. Inside, Richard's letter, printed with his name in block type, 2 lines too close to the margin. "We'd like to offer you full authority over client engagement. Compensation is negotiable. We now recognize your approach as the foundation we should have built on." The word "now" sat in its own sentence as if that made it absolution. I printed the letter anyway, not to consider it, just to feel the weight of it in paper, not theory. I folded it into thirds, not evenly. The creases didn't align. I placed it inside a plain envelope along with a note card. I didn't sign it. I kept the sentence brief. "I won't be returning. Thank you for confirming what I already knew." I didn't seal it. I just slipped it into a drawer with the extra stationery I only use when I have no reason to send anything. Later that day I opened my laptop. The folder marked Pemberton Backups sat where it always had, above archived files I hadn't touched in months. I didn't open it. I right-clicked and selected Move to Trash. Then I emptied the bin without hesitation. The folder below it, once labeled Clients Claire, I renamed Roots. Not because I needed metaphor, but because everything I carried from that place had already grown into something else. On LinkedIn, I replaced the photo. The new one is grayscale. No logos, no background blur, no curated pose. Just my face, eyes level, mouth still. The expression people mistake for neutral when it's actually full. A cousin once told me, "You always act like you're too careful to break anything." I had wanted to say no. I just know what gets quietly thrown away. Instead, I looked at the frame of her glasses and the way her fingers gripped the stem of her wine glass too high, and said, "Nothing. Some endings don't need punctuation. Only the decision not to rewrite the sentence." I didn't realize how quiet a morning could be until nothing waited for me. The kettle shut off without a beep. I touched the handle. No heat, no surprise. The cup was plain, no logo, no memory. I poured the tea, watched it settle. No spoon, no sugar, just water and leaves enough. A card sat on the table unopened since last week. Cream-colored one line inside, "I'm glad you never stopped caring." No signature. I didn't need one. I left the window open. The air moved without purpose, slow and unsure. The sun found its way to the corner of the floor and stayed there. I sat by the wall. The chair was old. I didn't adjust it. My green notebook rested in my lap. I flipped a page but didn't write. Hutchins, Blake, Doris. No updates, just names that no longer asked for remembering. I kept the page flat. No fold, no mark. Once my sister told me, "You always need everything to mean something. No one has time for that." She said it while slicing pie. I passed her the plate. Now I pass nothing. A bicycle passed outside, quiet wheels, no hurry. The rider didn't look in. The tea cooled. The light moved slowly across the white wall. No alerts, no messages, nothing undone. And for the first time I wasn't waiting to be known. I was simply still.